In 1987, when he got D. Scott, that was the offensive piece that Bobby felt that he had to have.
I started out high school basketball in a small town in Leesburg, Virginia called Loudoun County. I was being recruited by a gentleman by the name of Stu Vetter. And he said, I think you should come to Flint Hill Prep. That was the beginning of my life changing.
Dennis was the #1 player in the country, and he was good. I mean, he could shoot the ball back then. From the distance he could shoot it from, it was amazing.
The thing about Dennis was he was big for a guard. He was like a Magic Johnson type player.
Bobby had really wanted to enhance his game, not limit his game. We told him he was going to play in the backcourt.
So when I heard that, it was pretty much a no-brainer.
Scott dropping it home. What a shooter. That's an NBA shooter right there.
You don't have to worry about Dennis crossing half court. Once he crosses half court, that's his range.
Georgia Tech, Scott open for three. Look out. There's no defense against that. None at all.
Him being able to shoot the ball as well as he has, that was the beginning of something special.
Becoming ACC Freshman of the Year was actually kind of easy.
I think the most incredible statistic about Dennis Scott is that three-point. He leads the league in three-pointers per game. He's only a freshman. What coolness.
Run the floor, get to my spot, be ready to shoot the basketball.
Without Dennis, we wouldn't have a winning season without Dennis Scott.
Man, you're going to my era now. This is going to be fun. Dennis Scott, one of the all-timers. ACC Player of the Year in 1990, led Georgia Tech to the Final Four. Freshman of the Year, drafted 4th overall by the Orlando Magic. The list goes on. And that jersey, retired by Georgia Tech. I know he feels good about that, getting his degree. We're going to address all kinds of stuff. Dennis Scott joins us here on ACC PM. Dennis, first of all, it's a pleasure having you on. I was just kidding around with you during the break. Man, the Thriller Dome, Bobby Crimmins got that thing cranked up in Atlanta. You were part of all that magic. The ACC was a different animal back then. But, man, the enthusiasm of Georgia Tech basketball and what Bobby had built, and here comes Kenny Anderson, you're lighting it up. You saw Brian Oliver. I mean, the list goes on and on. Those were some great times in Atlanta, weren't they?
Well, it was great times in Atlanta. Just great times in ACC basketball. There was so many storylines, Coach V, Coach Dean Smith, those were the biggest names at the time. And of course, with Bobby Crimmins coming down to Atlanta, he was trying to put Georgia Tech on the map, which he did. So going back and look at all the freshmen of the years that he had, I think it was like 7 out of his first 9. So it was just crazy how he was able to walk in different homes and convince us to come to Atlanta.
Well, I've done a lot of shows with Bobby on radio, and, of course, he's one of the all-time great people, great storytellers. I can only imagine if you guys got together and wrote a book, it'd be people would say, there's no way that's true. Because, Bobby Crimmins is one of the all-time characters, but, he was also a great coach. He was a great players coach, wasn't he? He allowed you guys to really be able to be who you are. And, of course, with your skills, you brought so many different weapons to the table in terms of, man, there's a 6'8" guy. We're not going out there and guard him, but you better, because you could light that thing up. But what was it like playing for Bobby Crimmins?
It was fun to everything you just mentioned, because some people thought that sometimes when you wear your emotions on your sleeves, it could be, detrimental. But for Bobby, he was very straightforward when he walked into the home and said, you have to go to class, you have to be a good student, and you have to be a good citizen. If you can do those things, I will allow you to play the game that you've been playing your whole life and why I'm recruiting you. So when you hear that as a young player, it's like, wow, this is not somebody that's trying to change your game. This is someone's trying to enhance your game, but you have to, meet those requirements of being a good kid, going to class, it's being a good, fun, student on campus, which, being downtown Atlanta is a fun campus for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, there's no question about that. But your teams back then were such a free-flowing. It was a fun team to watch. I can only imagine, since you had a front row seat and participating with all this stuff. Every time you saw a Georgia Tech basketball game, it was like, man, grab your popcorn, because this is going to be a show. It was fun.
And you hit the key word was show. So when you look at, Mark Price and John Sally started things, and they had their personality, then Dow Ripple and Pharrell. So now it's time for me to take it to the next level. And then I get that phenom Kenny Anderson from New York. And that's when that free flowing you're talking about, that's what made Bobby so unique, that he was able to go out and recruit the kind of guys that were going to play a certain way. And that's what free flowing, that's what the fans wanted to watch at that time.
Now, Kenny was your roommate, right?
Yep, Kenny was my roommate, so I had to get used to, yo, D, shoot the ball, D, the action, yo. So I had to get used to that right away, that New York accent. And he would always mess with me and say, man, stop dribbling the basketball, shoot it. And then I said, no problem.
The great thing about Kenny, though, he would get you the basketball, right? You didn't have a problem knowing that, you know what, he would love the assist and he'd love setting you up.
So it's a fun thing to, when I talk to young kids and even coaches that, in the NBA, we call it the throw ahead to Jason Kidd. But back at Georgia Tech, it was the KA, where you look at some of those highlights. He's throwing the ball ahead, one pass, I'm catching and shooting, or it's one pass, Brian Oliver's getting the layup. Where kids today over dribble, so it's hard to get those easy opportunities in transition. Kenny was the best at that season, and that's why we were so successful.
Yeah, you guys were so much fun to watch. Like I said, making that run to the Final Four. And, of course, you went up against that Vegas team, which wasn't bad either. And, Duke found out, you guys found out, but it didn't take away from the joy that you guys had playing each and every night. And it was great as, again.
But let me add that something. So for all the coaches that watch this, you have to ask yourself, do you listen to tradition, or do you trust the guys you've been trusting how you got there? Kenny gets his fourth foul, and it's amazing how you remember this 35 years later, right? With 14:05 on the clock. Traditionally, you take the guy out the game and you want to save the fouls. But we're talking about Kenny Anderson. Don't you trust it? Don't you trust Kenny's going to do the right thing? Don't you trust that your freshman phenom's going to do what needs to be done so he doesn't foul out? So I tell that story because he doesn't foul out. We're up by 11. We lose the momentum. He goes out the game, and we never could get back. So that's always a fun story. It's kind of like you're up by 3. Do you foul the team under 5 seconds or 4 seconds? That kind of tradition. So I always like to have fun with that story.
Yeah, and again, that Vegas team was special too, with what Tarkett had built and so forth.
Trust me, I work with Greg Anthony. I work with Greg Anthony at NBA TV, so trust me, he reminds me.
How prideful is it to see, though, the jersey going up in the rafters? I mean, this to me, when I heard it the first time, I was like, you mean it wasn't already up there? I mean, come on, man, this guy was a special player. But this is an incredible honor, right? I mean, this is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and again, your love for Georgia Tech. This is a win-win proposition.
That's the part right there. It's a win-win situation, and it checks all the boxes. So when I get the question of why it wasn't up, the last box I had to check was I had to graduate. Yep. So coming back, being 53 years old, going to school, going to grad school, getting my master's, I must admit it was so gratifying because being a young entrepreneur, I realized some of the mistakes I've made in business already. So that's been kind of fun. But more importantly, fulfilling a promise for my mom, that's what makes it an extra win. And then for my, younger kids, I have a son at Georgia State right now. I have a daughter at Mount Vernon School here in Sandy Springs, here in Atlanta. So to see their dad go through this and see how taking academics is still serious, just how much fun I had on the court. So everything comes full circle.
Yeah, it's a very cool story. And I think also, too, given you mentioned your entrepreneurial spirit, it's also another life lesson, right? When you start to talk with young people and understand that, hey, you can do whatever you want in this great country of ours, but, man, do not cut short a chance to get a great quality education. It will serve you to the last day and the last breath.
And that last breath for me right now is in real time, talking to kids and trying to educate them what NIL really means and going through adversity, sometimes fighting through something is really big. So if I would have transferred after my first year or second year and finished my last 2 years, do you retire my jersey at Georgia Tech? Where does my alliance, where's my foundation? So for me, I try to share the story. If everything is real time now, and I had the same 4 schools recruiting me, and the so-called NIL money is the same, I'm probably still going to Georgia Tech because of Bobby Crimmins, because of Perry Clark, because of Brian Oliver, because of Dwayne Farrell, because of Michael Christian. On my visits, those guys I connected with. So I still would have gone to Georgia Tech.
Dennis, I know that you had a great NBA career too, but I mean, can you imagine though, if your prime was right now as far as coming out of high school, the crazy money? I mean, I know you probably think back sometimes and go, man, folks don't have any idea what the 80s were like. It was a whole different universe. But what do you think your value would have been at a school like Georgia Tech or anywhere else for that matter, given what your accolades were coming out of high school, if that were right now?
So whoever the number 1 player is, which I think last year was Cooper Flagg, and this year is I think AJ DeBastia kid who's out in Utah. And they say right now his evaluation is $5 to $7 million once he goes in as a freshman next year. So I was the Naismith Player of the Year my senior year. So whatever that going rate is, so I guess I'm worth $4, $5, $6 million to going rate today.
It's fun to think about, though, isn't it? I mean, it's just crazy where we are.
But more importantly, though, more now on a fun, serious note, I probably stay in school though. So this is for the younger generation. Spencer Haywood created the hardship rule.
Yeah, that's right.
We left school because my mom had a 2-bedroom apartment. So I went to summer school my sophomore year because I didn't want to sleep on the couch or I didn't want to sleep in that little twin bed. That's what the original rule was for. Hardship. So for the young generation who don't understand, no, we weren't chasing the money because of the glitz, the glamour, the commercials and drive nice cars and the jewelry and all the stuff these kids see today and the big contract. It was a family thing first.
Yeah.
Where today is, if he's McDonald's All-American, he's pretty good, he's one and done. That's how it's flipped.
Yep.
So I always like to educate people on that. And the original NIL was back then, all those Scott, all those Anderson, all those Oliver jerseys for Lethal Weapon 3 that was sold all the way to the Final Four, ACC champions, we got $0 for that. That's what the NIL was originally fighting for. So I think people need to understand that.
You're 100% right. By the way, before I let you go, Damon Stoudemire, I know it was a tough loss the other night. You got upbeat about Georgia Tech basketball moving forward because he's bringing an NBA mentality to Georgia Tech without question.
And I think that mentality is the accountability, playing the right way, understanding you have to have the right talent. He knows that, and I think he's able to say, guys, I just left Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, 2 $300 million guys. I know what it looks like where you want to go. And if you're not playing a certain way, you don't have a certain talent, you can't come in and demand certain things unless you are warranted that. And I think that's something that Damon's going to do is to get those type of players in there we're used to seeing and then, mix in some, guys that need to be in school 3 or 4 to 5 years. And then now you're building a good program.
Dennis, first of all, you and I could probably talk for hours about old school ACC stuff, but congratulations on all your success. Congratulations on getting that degree. I mean, all the stuff you accomplished in basketball, again, walking across that stage and your kids having a smile on their face, that's what it's all about.
There it is right there.
I love it. Love everything about that. Love everything about it. So congratulations on all of that, man, and look forward to seeing you somewhere down the road. But again, loved watching you play and really, really happy for all of it that's coming your way.
Well, I really appreciate you, and anytime the ACC Network needs me, if the schedule permits, I'm there.
You got it. Thank you, Dennis. Take care of yourself. Be good.
Appreciate you.